Hello and welcome to our special coverage of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I'm Ladi Akiriduluale. The headlines. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says more than 400 Russian war crimes have been committed in the freed province of Kherson. Crowds singing Ukrainian songs at Kherson's Freedom Square as celebrations after Ukrainian forces retake city reach a climax. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Russia is responsible for global economic challenges. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that in the recently liberated town of Kherson, investigators have uncovered more than 400 war crimes in areas abandoned by Russian forces as they retreated. According to him, Mr. Zelensky said the bodies of civilians and soldiers had also been found. Although the allegations are yet to be verified, Moscow denies its troops intentionally targets civilians. Ukrainian authorities have imposed an overnight curfew and restricted travel in and out of Kherson. Mr. Zelensky made this known in his nightly video address.
Задокументовано більше 400 російських воєнних злочинів.
The fighting in Donetsk region is as intense as it was in the previous days. The pace of the Russian attacks is not decreasing. Our soldiers' level of resilience and courage is the greatest. We are not letting them break through. We're not letting them break through our defense. I thank each of our warriors for this. Over the past 24 hours, the territory of 5 of our region has been subjected to missiles, aviation, and artillery strikes by the invaders. These are Sumy, Kharkiv, Zaporizhzhia, Lushansk, and the next region. We are doing everything to make the enemy feel our response, so he could feel it to the maximum. Along the entire front line, we ensure the destruction of enemy supply chains, ammunition depots, and headquarters. We have to reduce the potential of the invader every day, without days off. This saves the lives of our people.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Footage taken over the weekend shows the Antonovsky Bridge, which links Ukraine's Kherson city to Russian-controlled territory, collapsed with several sections missing. The footage was taken from the Ukrainian-controlled western bank of the Dnipro River. Serhiy Klohan, a deputy for Kherson's regional council, says that Russian troops had blown up the bridge after retreating and that they had also blown up a power plant. Russia has yet to comment on Klohan's remarks, but the Russian Defense Ministry said earlier that it had completed the withdrawal of its troops from the western bank of the Dnipro River and that Russia had not suffered any loss of personnel or equipment during the withdrawal. And Ukrainian troops wrapped their country's flag on the remains of the Antonovsky Bridge in the southern Kherson region. The bridge, which is a key crossing of the Dnipro River in southern Ukraine, was heavily damaged as Russian forces withdrew from its western banks on November the 11th. And volunteers have been distributing humanitarian aid to residents of that city, recently recaptured by armed forces of Ukraine. Residents greeted the volunteers with words of gratefulness and glory to Ukraine slogans. World Central Kitchen Organization prepared 600 packages with cereals, pasta, oil, canned food, jam, and other things and distributed them in different districts of Kherson. Stanislav Stoikov, a military volunteer who accompanied the group, says they plan to bring an even bigger truck with humanitarian aid to the city in a few days. Ukrainian troops arrived in the center of Kherson after Russia abandoned the only regional capital it had captured since its invasion began in February. The withdrawal marks the third major Russian retreat of the war and the first to involve yielding such a large occupied city in the face of a major Ukrainian counteroffensive that has retaken parts of the east and south. And celebrations are continuing in Kherson as crowds of jubilant flag-waving Kherson residents gathered on the city's main square. Residents say life is back to the city again and there's joy on every street. And even though there's no electricity, no water, no internet, no communications, no heating, there are no Russians either. And that's why they're happy. However, local authorities say most of the city, as we've just reported, lacks electricity or water, but they're working to restore critical services. Humanitarian situation remains very difficult. Some of those celebrating on Kherson's main square, however, said the problems paled compared with the joy of seeing Ukraine troops entering the city. Officials reported some early progress in restoring normalcy. World leaders are gathered on the Indonesian island of Bali for the meeting of 20 major world economies. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says communicating Russian responsibility for global economic woes will be a focus of the G20 summit. Mr. Trudeau adds that the focus is going to be very much on ensuring that all countries in the G20 understand the responsibility that Russia holds for the challenges facing citizens in all of the countries. He also spoke on a number of other issues.
Yesterday, I shared that we'll be investing in a fund to help advance the negotiation of a free trade agreement with ASEAN. We'll also invest in a new Canadian trade gateway in Southeast Asia, a trade gateway that will help Canadian businesses expand into Indo-Pacific markets, linking them to incubators, entrepreneurs, and accelerators. These investments will mean more jobs for Canadians and more growth for ASEAN economies. While we invest to create more jobs and more opportunities for people, we're also working to build a more resilient future. Around the world, over the past years, we've been seeing flooding, hurricanes, and wildfires caused by climate change. The consequences of climate change are real for our communities and for our economies. Many countries in Southeast Asia, especially coastal ones with islands, just like Canada, are even more vulnerable to climate change. Over the next 5 years, we'll invest here in the Indo-Pacific region to increase international assistance to partner countries, including support for sustainable and climate-resilient infrastructure. We're also stepping up our work to protect the environment. Canada has world-class expertise in oceans management, and we can use this expertise to help. We're committed to keep the ocean healthy in the Indo-Pacific region, and we'll invest to create a new shared oceans fund. I think because the biggest question that we are facing in the world right now as a global economy is in part the instability that flows from Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine, the energy crisis that has flowed from it, the inflation crisis that has flowed from it, the food crisis that has flowed from Russia's illegal actions. It's important as a G20 we work together to deal with threats to the global economy. We know that Russia has continued to spread misinformation and disinformation on their role in global instability, and the conversations we'll have around the G20 will be very, very clear to all our partners that Russia is responsible for making an already challenging world so much more challenging for millions, if not billions, of citizens who are suffering, not just those directly impacted by its illegal war in Ukraine, but those who are disrupted by the challenges of the global economy that it has caused. The word genocide, acts of genocide, are things to be taken incredibly seriously as a world. And we have objective, historical, expert processes to put in place those words and those designations. We continue to call out vicious human rights abuses around the world, including against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang by the Chinese government. But designations of genocide need to be made by proper international authorities.
Let's talk to Laddie Williams Let's talk to Laddie Williams of our business desk. Laddie.
Good morning. Thank God it's Monday.
Yes, it's a Monday, and things start off slow usually on Monday.
Right.
But not on business, apparently.
Oh, yeah.
The IMF is saying it will not ban Russian metals from its system. What does that mean?
So, yeah, that's the London Metals Exchange. That's the largest and oldest industrial materials exchange, in the world. So, on that exchange, we see most of the global metals, being traded, and apparently a lot of, Russian metals are actually, being traded there. So the exchange is saying, at this time, there's a huge portion, of Russian metal on the exchange that are still, being traded, in the futures market up to 2023. So what they're saying at this time is it will be unrealistic to actually ban, Russian metals, at this time, because they still have, deliveries, future deliveries for 2023, and it's actually understandable. But we're not, at the end of the day, the U.S. and its allies are looking for ways, to
cut off all sources of Russian funding.
Exactly. So, and
this is a big one.
It's a big one. It's a big one. And at the end of the day, the LME is saying that they cannot, put such a ban, at this time, because that would negatively impact, most of the customers there. How are they gonna, make do for the future, contracts that they have, on the exchange? So it's quite understandable, but it remains to be seen if at some point they actually bow to pressure and
do this.
Yeah, but the way it's looking right now, they say they cannot go through with that.
Now, this is something that will impact everyone, not just the LME and, of course, Russia.
Right.
Russia says there's no agreement yet on the Black Sea Grain Initiative.
Oh, yes. Yeah, so apparently Russia, they have their own demands at this time. We know how they've been sanctioned, on all sides, the financial markets and all of that. And they're asking that some of these, sanctions on how they play in the global market, that's, the financial sanctions, some are actually lifted, so that they can also profit, from their grain exports. So they have their demands, and they're making it known at this time, and they're saying, you know what, if you do not, heed to some of our demands, then we will not renew, the grain deal. And obviously that's a big blow. And at this point, their hands are tied. They would have to somehow, play to Russia's tune, because they need this grain deal. So it remains to be seen if they actually, bow to the pressure, from Russia. But it's looking like, we saw the impacts, on
yeah,
food
that's
prices.
What I was going to say, that the prices went haywire when we were talking about this. So
last time. So apparently, if this deal is not,
sealed, and it has
sealed,
a deadline, November 19th,
yes, then
is when it has to be sealed by.
We'll now see, food prices, inching up again, and that would deal a big blow to the inflation story right now. We've seen, in the U.S., the inflation story is looking like it's peaking, so, and the markets have reacted positively to that, believing that at some point, the jumbo rate hikes are going to end. But this deal has to go through.
It's central to that, because you talk about the U.S.,
yes,
but in the case of the U.K., food prices are part of what is stoking the inflation in that country.
Exactly, and the MENA countries too, Middle East and North Africa.
Indeed.
They are. This is big for them. They need all those grains, coming out at this time. Even though we've seen how it's impacted the Egyptian economy, at this time. So at the end of the day, they have to come to some
kind of compromise. There's just too much at stake.
There's too much at stake. But we know that it is going to deal a blow to the sanctions, that the U.S. and its allies are trying to, level on Russia and at this time. If they have to, lift some of these sanctions, it's going to be a game changer. And at the end of the day, the Russian war machine, will still be powered.
One way or the other, as we have learned.
Yes.
Now, the Bank of Russia is setting out to regulate the digital assets,
right,
and tax them and all of that. But it's opposed to crypto. But just before we get to that,
yes,
what's the very latest on the development you briefed us about on
the
Friday?
Binance.
Those two huge.
Yeah.
One of them has filed for bankruptcy now.
Exactly. That's FTX. That's the one that started all of this tremor we're feeling in the crypto market at this time. So at the end of the day, we saw tweets from the owner of FTX. He is the former owner now because he's resigned, and he was apologizing to the users, saying that he messed up, you know, using user funds for risky bets, and it's kind of showing how irresponsible some of these crypto leaders are, you know, at this time. And Binance Exchange, which is like the #1 exchange, you know, right now, that's the owner, CZ Binance. He actually said why he came out with this information was to cleanse the crypto ecosystem, in his words, because he saw that there was a lot of rascality, you know, going on in the market with some of the players, which we saw with FTX there, you know, playing with user funds. Right now, the exchange is actually locked down, and most users cannot actually bring out, you know, their funds. They also claim.
So this is not about apologies.
It's not about apology. We're talking about real life, you know, investment, real life investors here losing millions and millions of dollars because the owner of the exchange felt he could make more money trading user funds. So the FTX exchange is still being investigated at this time, but users are not able, you know, to get their funds at this time. We've seen them, you know,
and they will not
Twitter.
be able to anytime in the near future while the investigation is on.
It's still going, but people are still kind of hopeful that there will be some kind of settlement. But in the past, we've seen, you know, big exchanges, you know, collapse, and at the end of the day, the story is users are not able to get their funds. So it brings that narrative now, not your keys, not your funds. Now everyone is being advised to hold your coins in your own wallet, but there's also risk to that, because being your own bank is not easy. You're taking full responsibility.
And full risk.
Full risk. It's on you this time. So you could get hacked, you know, and lose your funds. But at the end of the day, traders believe I'd rather lose my funds myself than
somebody else take
that I trust,
use it in a very negative way, and
I lose my funds.
Anyway.
So both ways, you know.
This provides reason for Russia wanting to regulate
exactly
this, because we thought at a point that Russia was going to try to use the cryptocurrency to bypass sanctions.
Exactly.
But they're weighing the ability to bypass the sanctions with this issue of regulation and losing money.
Exactly. And obviously also losing control, you know, at this time, because with the decentralized nature of cryptocurrency, you know, they cannot follow through with most of the, they cannot oversee, you know, the transactions, you know, that their citizens actually, you know, put out there. So even though it's a public ledger, there is that privacy that, you know, the government does not like. The government wants to be able to see what's going on. So you're not able to bypass tax, you know, and all of that. So at the end of the day, they're trying to see how they can, you know, balance using cryptocurrencies and digital assets as a government, and limiting how their, you know, citizens actually use it, so that they do not lose control of their financial system. So that's why they're still working on that central bank digital currency, the digital ruble,
right.
You know, and obviously that puts a lot of control on the central bank, you know. But at the end of the day, adoption is still an issue, because, you know, most countries that have, you know, launched their central bank digital currency are struggling with adoption at this time. Take, for instance, Nigeria.
I mean, that was going to be my example.
Because I don't know if you've ever received the e-Naira, but I have not.
I haven't either.
Yeah, so adoption is an issue. But, you know, the central bank did come out and say they had about 700,000, you know, transactions in 1 year, valued about 10 billion naira. So Not bad. But at the end of the day, we need to see
getting more and more people to
exactly, and even getting the grassroots, you know,
to get into it, to use it, to understand its advantages.
It takes a whole lot for sure.
How are markets doing? I mean, I know at the start of this discussion, I talked about Monday starting off slow,
right.
But is that true for the markets?
For the markets, it's kind of slow because investors are watching a lot, you know, coming out, a lot of data, you know, coming out this week. And at the end of the day, they're trying to gauge, you know, how much or how less the Fed is going to raise rates, you know, going forward. So they have that housing report, you know, coming out this week for the U.S. to see if, you know, the recent hikes have had any impact, you know, on the housing market. So investors are going to be watching out for that, global, you know, investors. And obviously in the crypto space, we're still seeing, you know, that FTX Binance issue weighing on the market.
On the market and the price of the crypto.
Exactly. Bitcoin has, you know, plummeted.
Dipped again because it was going up last week.
Yeah.
But then towards the end when this scandal broke.
With that good CPI data we got from the U.S., we saw the crypto market actually react positively to that. But still, it's still that FTX issue, you know, hanging, you know, on the market. Some have, you know, likened it to the Lehman, you know, brothers,
yes, the
collapse, you know, and every other big black swan issue that's happened in financial system. So it's a big one. It remains to be seen how the crypto market actually, you know, plays this out. But it's not a good look. It's not a good look playing with valuable user funds, you know, at this time when people are being squeezed from all sides, from inflation, you know, and rising cost of living. So it's a big blow for the industry.
Indeed. We'll just have to hope that it's the start of the week. Maybe, you know, as the week goes on, we get better news.
Yeah.
But Ladi, thanks for that. Ladi will have more news, hopefully more sharing news.
More sharing, hopefully.
Yeah, in the Business Morning and Business Incorporated programs. But thanks for now.
Thank you.
Let's take a break. British Defense Minister Ben Wallace says Ukraine has momentum, but Russia is a long way from giving up. Details in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden has landed in Cambodia, still reveling in midterm election results that have produced an unexpected boost at home for his second 2 years in office. A day after he arrived in Asia, he got another piece of news from back home that could give him yet another lift through the rest of his international swing. From his hotel lobby after the projection, Mr. Biden says, "We feel good about where we are, and I know I'm a cockeyed optimist."
Tell you what, congratulations to Senator Schumer. He's got a majority again, and we're focusing now on Georgia. We feel good about where we are, and I know I'm a cockeyed optimist. I understand that from the beginning, but I'm not surprised by the turnout. I'm incredibly pleased by the turnout, and I think it's a reflection of the quality of our candidates, and they're all running on the same program. There wasn't anybody who wasn't running on what we did. They're all sticking with it. And so I feel good. I'm looking forward to the next couple of years. How's your life? We're going to try to get as much done as we can to continue to fulfill the agenda. We're also going to have to be waiting on what happens with the court case on student debt, which is very important to me. And so there's a lot to be done, but we're going to slow down and get a chance to talk to the.
Do you feel that with this result you're coming in stronger with President Xi Jinping?
I know I'm coming in stronger, but I don't need that. I know Xi Jinping. I've spent more time with any other world leader. I know him well. He knows me. There's no, we have very little misunderstanding. We just got to figure out where the red lines are, and what are the most important things to each of us going into the next 2 years. And his circumstances changed, to state the obvious, at home. And so we're going to have I think, I've always had straightforward discussion with him. There's never any miscalculation about where each of us stand. And I think that's critically important in our relationship.
Hayden, are you still confident that Democrats could keep the House?
I'm confident they could, yeah. Whether they will. Look, it's an outside. It's a stretch. everything has to fall our way. I just got off the phone with Congressman Levin, who just won. There's several more seats in California. I'm not predicting this, but I'm predicting that, as I've said all along, it'd be perilously close. We can win it. Whether we're going to win it remains to be seen.
British Defense Minister Ben Wallace says Ukraine has the momentum in its war with Russia, but Moscow is a long way from giving up. Mr. Wallace also said Russia's withdrawal from Kherson, the only regional capital in Ukraine that it had captured since its invasion began in February, was another setback for its army, but Moscow continues to pose a threat. He also commented on the importance of the Remembrance Commemoration Service, the first time since the Second World War that there is a war on continental Europe while it is being celebrated.
What I do is just caution with the scenes. I mean, obviously, quite right, Ukraine has taken back the only objective of the many that Russia managed to capture back in sort of March. Kherson was one of the many objectives. Russia failed. Now Ukraine has got that back, and it basically begs the question to the Russian population, effectively, what was it all for? But also it shows a remarkable capability by Ukraine, who many people across the world didn't think would last more than a few weeks. They've not only lasted a few weeks, they've lasted many months. They've effectively degraded massively the Russian armed forces and have taken back the only objective left. So psychologically, Russia will be, worried and disappointed by this. But you never underestimate Russia. History will remind you that Russia can be brutal to their own, and if they need more cannon fodder, that is what they'll be doing. And we see today that they announced, children in schools are going to be trained, and that's the type of regime we're up against. I think it's up to the Ukrainians to decide when and how they want to negotiate. Ultimately, Ukraine will want to do that from a position of strength. The momentum is with Ukraine. I can't see why Ukraine would stop now. Well, I think today is a reminder that we've suffered wars in Europe before, and tens of thousands of British service personnel gave their lives as civilians to defeat fascism. And here we are again, tragically, decades later, with a war on continental Europe and Ukraine, where a similar Russian regime is trying to impose its will on a sovereign state, costing tens of thousands of lives. And of course, what Remembrance is about is recognizing that freedom isn't free. People make sacrifices. And this nation made the ultimate sacrifice on two occasions in the Great Wars, but also on other conflicts since. And Remembrance is a time to reflect on that. Yes, I think first time since the Second World War, there is a war on continental Europe, and that is costing tens of thousands of lives, and it's an unnecessary war where Russia is trying to impose itself on another sovereign state.
All right, let's talk to Ambrose Igboke, chairman of the Guild of Public Affairs Analysts, the Enugu State chapter, joins us virtually as usual. Good morning to you, Mr. Igboke. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, laddie. Nice to be with you again.
Let me start from the last comment made by the British Defense Secretary Ben Wallace that Ukraine has succeeded in taking back its country with Kherson. With a victory in Kherson, which was the only large city that Russia had since its invasion in February, the takeover back of the country is complete. But that Russia is not about to give up. Do you have that same sense that, Ukraine has taken back essentially its country, but that Russia is not going to give up?
Absolutely. I agree with him. Because when you look at it, even Ukraine has warned its citizens that they shouldn't come out so much to the city center and other public places, and they should not be crowded, because Russia also left mines behind. And so Ukraine is trying to demine Kherson. And that shows that the war is a war of more of attrition. Because why will you, in the 21st century, leave mines behind to damage citizens, to kill more people? So I thought that when you come to war, when you defeat, you live peacefully where you are defeated. But planting mines in the city is tantamount to want to, further, punish the citizens for no just cause. Ukraine has surprised the world, as you rightly said. Nobody gave it a chance. But also, Ukraine is a powerful military country. Remember, they had nuclear weapons. It was just some few years ago that because of an agreement that they destroyed their own nuclear weapon. They still have a lot of nuclear plants, but they're using it for electric energy needs and other energy needs. So you cannot write off Ukraine, because Ukraine was part of the all-powerful USSR those days. And a lot of the USSR armory was actually stored in Ukraine until the division of in the early 90s when the almighty USSR was dissolved. And just not too long ago that it was moved back to Russia. So in that sense, Ukraine is not a pushover country. Most of they are even sibling, I mean, they are relative, they are fratricidal in nature. So this war is a fratricidal war because they are of the same family, they are of the same stock. In fact, coincidentally, the names of the two leaders are the same. I mean, that of Russia and that of Ukraine. They are all the same, with a little bit of different inflections from the various languages. So coming to that, it shows that these people are united. Why they are in this war is dumbfounds people in the 21st century. But Russia, being what it is, does not give up on this kind of thing. Russia is a very proud country. Vladimir Putin is a megalomaniac dictator. He will not give up. The way he's making it, he's talking about we want to, that is redemption for the people of Ukraine. Redemption from who? From what? Because if you say redemption, were they enslaved? Were the Ukrainians enslaved? They were not enslaved. But these are all war propaganda. And it has been used by, it's been used by Russia. It's also used by, it was used by United States when they said Assad crossed the red line and they went into Syria. It has also been used by the West when they also went to liberate, in quotes, the people of Libya, where they went to liberate the people of Iraq, where they went to liberate, so when these super nations aggressively, enter other countries, invade other countries, they start using the word redeem, to redeem the people, to free them. Free them from who? So these are all war propaganda. And both the West, be it France, be it United States, be it Britain, they're all guilty of this kind of offenses. You are not liberating anybody. You are just going there for economic wars. You are going there for usurpation of power. You are going there for amassing land mass for your own good and seizing natural mineral resources of the people. And that has been a trend in the last 40, 50 years. And I think it's time for the United Nations to sit down and talk to the superpowers. They claim to be policing the world, but look at what they are causing. The superpowers themselves are all guilty of this, and they should sit down and really try to factor a new way forward that will be, not involving these wars of invasion in different countries or whatever guise there may be. Some other people, the West will say they want to restore democracy in some countries. They will move into a country, invade it. Russia has been watching America do it all over again, and some other countries. And so if the America was not doing it and other countries were not doing it over these years, I don't think Russia would have attempted it. But because they're all guilty of it, and it becomes a pastime for them, United Nations should do more to stop this kind of unnecessary wars.
Now, given what you said, and us now taking a look at the game plan on either side, I mean, basically the Russians are being pushed out of Ukraine. I think the only occupied territory the Russians have now is Crimea itself, which they annexed in 2014. If the Ukrainians complete their takeover of Kherson over the next couple of hours or days, then, of course, Crimea will be the next target. And the Ukrainians have said as much, that they're going to go after Crimea and get it back because it's a part of Ukraine. What could possibly be the game plan now beyond today? The Russians, as you pointed out, appear to be on the back foot. The Ukrainians appear to have the momentum. So what could be the game plan going forward? The Ukrainians may press, possibly, go into Russia. Do you think they could and be on the advance? Or is it that having secured back Ukraine will return to peace?
Laddie, how can you say that Ukrainians will march to Russia? How can you
no, it's a question I'm asking. I said, is it possible? Could it be a military objective of theirs?
That must be a fancy book from a book from the fancy war book. I mean, Ukraine cannot risk that. So it will be enough for them to have taken over I think this is the time, as you asked, going forward, this is the time to consolidate on the gains. And one of the, what I would say, platforms to consolidate this is to see whether this is a time to negotiate quickly. Russia is not in a position of strength right now. So they will not be asking too much or requesting for too much or demanding for too much when it comes to the negotiation table. So the West, the United Nations, and even Ukraine, this is the time to negotiate. And so, okay, give us back Crimea, give us the, have some economic concessions for both sides, and see whether this war can come to an end quickly before deep winter comes in. So because we are still talking about the energy crisis, we are talking about the heating systems. The winter is at hand. What have we been doing? What will be the fate of citizens of Ukraine if they don't have gas to power their heaters? What will be the citizens of most part of Europe too if they don't do this? If they don't have gas to power their heaters? Remember that this war has also, reversed the gain we made in the climate change towards climate change adjustment. For example, Germany has reopened its coal plant, which has closed for almost 3 decades. So these are part of the issues that have come up, and the earlier it's beginning to begin to reverse these damages, the better for Europe and the world. So going forward, while Ukraine is consolidating on its hold on the free region, and Russia is going back to lick its wound and probably re-strategize, this is a time to now bring negotiation to the table, because Ukraine is on the position of strength, so it can negotiate better. Russia is a position of weakness. The West and the other people can extract more commitments from Russia and see the way to quickly end the war or get some concession, at least to bring some kind of a level of normalcy between the two brothers, because they are related actually, and they are in the same contiguous area. And so that the people between now and Christmas can have a way of, powering their heaters. Otherwise, we'll record a lot of deaths from natural issues rather than even the war itself. So
before I allow you go, I must ask you this because you referenced it earlier when you mentioned the United Nations. The United Nations, beyond the Green Deal, which it came in late, the country that actually negotiated that Green Deal was Turkey. The United Nations was brought in. Why do you have so much optimism that perhaps that the United Nations can do what you are saying now needs to be done between now and Christmas to ensure that things are ironed out in a way that they don't flare up again? Why do you think the United Nations will be able to do that? It hasn't been able to do that.
Well, the United States has the capacity and has the means to do it. Why it has not done it is because those who are spearheading the activities of the United Nations are not interested. The United States of America, France. France is even more disposed. Let's say the United States of Britain. They are not, they are not in tune with trying to end this war quickly. Rather, they are flexing muscles, and that is why United Nations have not been able to do much. So, if we can go the way of peace, and not this attitude of charging, escalating the war from press statements, from wars, charging Ukraine to do this, denigrating Russia, playing up both sides. Because what I see the West doing is they're playing up both sides to dig in. And that is why they have. So if America and Britain can agree on the path that Turkey has earlier told to ensure that we have some kind of compromises, then the United States, the United Nations will surely come in. So these two countries are the people that will actually ensure that United Nations come in. Once they agree on this, the United Nations can come in quickly and the deal will be done. Not agreeing to that reality is like fooling ourselves. They are the people running the United Nations.
We'll be watching them. We'll be watching them very closely. And, of course, we'll come back to you not too long in the future, Mr. Egbuke, to see whether this prediction turns out and this hope is borne out by the reality, as you said. But thank you for your time this morning. It's been a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you, Ladi, for having me.
A plastic effigy of President Vladimir Putin on a tiny tank turns up in a London park. Details in a moment. Please stay on with us. Thanks for staying tuned. We're on the last lap now. Sports news out of this conflict and relating to the countries involved. English Premier League side Brighton Hove and Albion is considering buying a number of players from Ukraine's Shakhtar Donetsk football club. Manager Roberto De Zerbi was previously in charge of the Ukrainian club for 14 months until July 2022. Mr. De Zerbi is understood to be very happy with Brighton's current squad, but feels a couple of additions in the January transfer window could secure a top 8 finish for the first time ever. The 43-year-old is set to sit down with colleague and good friend Salvatore Monaco, who is now part of Brighton's recruitment team after previously working together at Shakhtar. And top seed Maya Sharif of Egypt continued her high standard of success at WTA 125 events as she overcame unseeded Katerina Bandil of Ukraine 3-6, 7-6, 7-5 in the LP Chile Kalina Open final. The Ukrainian had to play 2 singles matches on Sunday as a semifinal against number 2 seed Danka Kovinic was postponed by a day due to rain. Sharif's latest clay-court triumph is the 4th WTA 125 title of her career and the 3rd for the year. Tournaments for professional female players played on outdoor clay courts are under this bracket. In central London, sitting astride a tiny tank, a real-life-sized effigy of Russian President Vladimir Putin made its debut at Regent's Park. It's part of a traveling exhibition of pop-up art by French street artist James Colomina. Parents and children alike reacted with surprise to the apparition of the bright red Putin sit astride a tiny tank, a little barrel sticking out from between his knees. The artist says he's showing the epoxy resin sculpture in various cities around the world to highlight the war in Ukraine and what he says is Mr. Putin's childish but dangerous behavior. He declines to be interviewed on camera, saying he does not want to distract attention from his art. Mr. Colomina traveled to London from his native city of Toulouse. He has previously installed the statue in Paris, Barcelona, and New York. His statue went on show without the permission of city authorities on the same day that the British street artist Banksy unveiled a work in the Ukrainian town of Borodinka. Some parents greeted the statue with enthusiasm.
Well, as we saw it coming, was like surprising in the park. I think it's brilliant, honestly, to have here Vladimir for us, all in red, bloody red. And I was saying, my friends, we're lucky that we're not the one being bombed at the moment because we forget about what's happening right now in Ukraine. And I wish it would be that easy to remove him, to put him away like it's this doll, because he's a big boy playing dangerous games and people are dying. So I'm very happy they are making this performance, and I wish more people to see.
An unnamed soldier holding a watermelon gathered with residents in Svobody Square of Kherson. The soldier celebrated with residents of Kherson following Russia's withdrawal from the city. The video then shows the soldier removing a Ukrainian flag from his helmet and pinning it to the chest of a baby held next to him.
З Херсона! Ми чомусь наша славна Україна зажурилася.
Elsewhere at the Dome Square in Kherson, a crowd sang a Ukrainian patriotic song together with the Ukrainian servicemen as the city was recaptured by the Ukrainian armed forces. People were holding Ukrainian flags and singing. Jubilant residents had welcomed the Ukrainian troops arriving in the center of Kherson after Russia had abandoned the only regional capital it captured since its invasion began in February.
А ми нашу славну Україну, гей, гей, розвеселимо. Слава Україні!
And it's on that jubilant note, at least for the Ukrainians, that we end the program this morning. My name is Ladi Akeri Duluale. Thanks for watching. There'll be updates of this and other stories internationally throughout the day, but particularly on the world today, so do watch out for that. But for now, do have yourselves a pleasant Monday and week ahead. Good morning.